Hello, everyone. Welcome to Manager's Pod. Thank you for joining us today. I'm joined by Sloan.
Hello.
And Jeff.
What's up?
And as always, my name is Duncan. And we really appreciate you listening to us. We're going to talk about some stuff. We're going to talk about things that happened at the table. We're going to talk about what does casual mean. We're going to talk about what's aggravating aggro Jeff. And things that don't do what you think they do. And we're going to talk about errata, cards that since they have come out, the wording has been changed officially, so it may not read the way that the card reads. So reading the card may not explain the card. But first of all, tales from the table. So we had a few things we discussed talking about for this one, but I think the one I want to talk about is something that happened when we did the pre-cons. And I did it wrong, and I don't think we really specified what I did wrong in the last episode.
Yeah.
So I think it's a good example of, something to talk about that happened at the table. It was an interesting story.
And to be fair, you're dealing with entirely new mechanic that didn't exist
Right.
before.
So specifically, I was playing Omo, which is the everything counters. You
Pre-con from Modern Horizons 3. Yeah.
You put an everything counter on a land and a creature anytime that Omo enters or attacks. And what that means is anything with an everything counter on it the lands have every land type, and a creature, if it has an everything counter, has every creature type. But I kind of forgot that as I'm playing because there's nothing that cared except for the lands. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing that cared about the creature counters. And I finally got a card, and I want to say it was Oblivion Stone, but I don't think that's right. But anyway, it's a card that said it came out for 4, and you can pay 4 and tap it and put a fate counter on target permanent, or you can pay 5, tap it, sack it. All things without fate counters on them get destroyed.
Right.
And in my head, I'm like, oh, my thing has everything counters, so I'm just going to pop it off right away, and my stuff will live and everybody else's will die.
Right.
And so I did, and I won, and everybody's like, yay, Duncan, as they always do when I win, because that's how it goes in my head.
Cheers upon cheers upon cheers.
Yeah, it is Oblivion Stone. I was right. So the problem is that's not how the everything counters work.
Yeah, implied by their name, that is not actually what they are. They are a counter that gives the permanent every type of...
Well, it actually doesn't give the permanent anything. Omo then says anything with an everything counter on it has every creature type.
Right.
So that is not at all. And that was the only card I found that had synergy. But, just in the excitement of it, I didn't stop to think about what it was actually doing.
Right, because a fate counter is different than an everything counter, even though the name of the counter is an everything counter. It's not actually a counter for everything.
It should be.
You would think with the name everything counter it is.
Although then that means that everything gets
menace,
death touch,
lifelink,
menace,
death touch,
lifelink, flying.
That would be a much better version of
that would be an OP deck.
They're just going to errata it and make it that's what they actually are now. And then that deck goes from being a not okay deck to top tier.
I think you can almost guarantee anytime you sit down and play Magic for, what did we play, 7, 8, 9 games, something like that?
Yeah.
You're going to screw up multiple times.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Even if you have a podcast that not very many people listen to.
Right.
Probably more so.
But
and then we'll go on and tell those 7 people we made a mistake.
That was the most fun I had that whole day.
And you did it wrong.
And I did it wrong.
Classic.
Yeah, you whined and complained the entire time we played those pre-cons.
I mentioned a couple times.
No.
I kept my mouth shut, and then you'd be like, Duncan, you don't look like you're having fun. Well, and I was having fun, but I would say something
I would definitely say the second deck.
Yeah, because the cards in my hand are just not playable.
The Omo deck, for sure, you were a lot more vocal than you were the first time.
Because it didn't make any sense.
Yeah, the Eldrazi one, you weren't as bad. You're just like, I don't understand this card, why it's here, but okay, I'll play it. Omo, you're just like, this card should just be burned. It shouldn't exist.
This card hurts me by existing.
Even if I allow for you weren't saying that much, just looking over at you just pissed off that your cards didn't do
But I
what
was still having fun.
Yeah,
Yes,
I mean,
we did have a great time.
We did have a good time.
and then we
even,
played like 6 times without those decks.
Right.
So
Yeah.
And we
that was
talked
really
a lot
fun.
about that last episode, so we're not going to
Yeah.
go
And then
into
we
more
actually got to
detail,
close the last game with Paxton. We got to play with.
That's
yeah.
right, my son.
Which was, and then we got all eaten by dinosaurs.
Yep.
So that was cool.
Yep.
Yeah.
Lovely. But so yeah, that's the Tales from the Table. And so now we're going to do our counterspell segment. And what does casual mean?
Yeah.
And I guess this is really, what does casual mean to you is what we're asking here.
So we're not going to say anything else. We're just going to let you guys comment, and that's that whole section.
Yeah.
And we're going to move on.
Yeah, we're just going to give the Webster's definition, and then we're done.
And then we're yeah, I mean, it is tricky to kind of define this. And again, I think it's because each person looks at it from a different perspective, kind of touching back on the 3 different versions of Commander that we now play, you know, the EDH original players, Commander players, and then CEDH, right? You kind of have this spectrum. And even inside,
we don't even talk about the black sheep that is Canadian Highlander. Like, we don't even get into that.
I don't even know what that means.
It has its own rules.
Oh my goodness.
I don't know what that is either.
Yeah, there's a Canadian Highlander.
Jeez Louise.
It's
poor
anyway.
Canadians.
They probably have
trying
to. They probably have to share all their cards. And if one person gets too many, they have to give them to the person.
Whenever you
with less.
draw your 7, you have to give 25% of it back.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, jeez. But yeah,
Truckers hate the game.
oh my gosh. But yeah, I mean, it's hard because even inside each of those, there's different definitions, obviously, of what you would find. So I'd say casual.
So I'm saying for you, what
right?
is
I would say casual is, generally speaking, you're not gonna, like, the earliest you're gonna see a win unless someone just gets a really lucky opening. Generally speaking, the earliest win you're gonna see is probably around like turn 7-ish or 8-ish. There's going to be a lot of swings, at least in casual. There should be a decent amount of kind of swings of power of who's kind of taking the game. Then it swings back to this person. Now it's going back the other way. So I feel like in casual, a game should take probably about 45 minutes to an hour. Shouldn't be less than 7-ish turns, give or take, 8-ish turns. Mm-hmm. And for the most part, cards wise, I don't think you shouldn't have what is kind of known as really CDH wins in those decks. You know, your Thassa's Oracles into Demonic Consultation. You shouldn't have in a casual deck if you want to claim that as a casual deck. So,
all right, Jeff, what's your definition?
I mean, I like what he said. He said it's hard to define. And so, like, the definition is without definite or serious intention, careless or offhand. And so you look at, like, the definition, you go, oh my gosh, casual basically means nothing. Yeah. There's just there's less of a plan, but I don't think that actually. I actually, yeah, the precons were casual. I actually have a different definition. I don't know that I love the word casual because I think the intent is different. So when I'm doing casual, let's say I'm building a typal deck, I'm gonna choose cards that go with that type. So I want dinosaur cards in there, even if they're not the best. In my dinosaur deck, I have a couple cards that are just not very good, but they have really cool dinosaurs on them. So they're in the deck. And that's kind of the mentality for me behind casual. So I have 2 enchantment decks. Enchantment decks are very powerful. I don't think you could argue they're not powerful.
All right.
But one of them is the sagas, right? So it's all sagas. And I had to make a decision when I'm building it, go, hey, that's a really good enchantment, but I'm going to purposely not put it in there because I would win with that instead of the saga. I want to win with the saga.
Right. So why have you not switched that, by the way, to Tom Bombadil? The only saga commander there is.
Because I'm using the wrong word. Saga is what I'm building with Tom Bombadil. Mine is the
ones that flip?
Shrines.
Shrines.
Yeah, very different.
Yeah, so shrines, and now I'm building sagas with Tom Bombadil. So again, you just make decisions to go, this deck is supposed to win with sagas, so don't put stuff that wins without it.
Right.
And the same thing for shrines.
Right.
Win with what you're trying to do. And if you do things that way, it's a lot better. Planeswalker deck, Yeah, you could put all kinds of other stuff in there, but the idea is you kind of want to do planeswalker-y things.
Right.
You mean like your first iteration of Atraxa where you had like 7 planeswalkers in your planeswalker deck?
Yeah, but all designed for them to get to their super.
Yeah, but you only have 7. You might not see them, which was what we kept teasing you about. Is we never saw your planeswalkers.
Yeah, but that was a long time ago.
Yes.
It definitely has planeswalkers now.
Yes. So my definition, thank you for asking, is that
But we didn't care.
We assumed you were going to say it whether we asked or not.
Oh,
so.
okay. Well, that was a nicer answer.
no, but my definition is
Good definition,
I
Jeff,
don't-
by the way. I'm gonna, I just wanted to see you do. Okay, Duncan, I won't proc this time. Go ahead. I promise.
you sure? All right.
Duncan, it's not nice to interrupt. That's what we're trying to tell you is we understand that.
This is an example for our listeners. I see, but no, my definition is so. I agree with some of the statements made. However, I think you can have Thassa's Oracle Demonic Consultation as long as you don't tutor for it.
That's wild.
See, in my mind, why put it in there then? If you're not going to go tutor for it to
Because
win,
after
why not
15
just go get it?
turns, when you get it, it's a mercy.
That's just
I
I don't think
but
so.
my point is, if you're putting it in there as a win condition, go get it. Like, why would you
No,
intentionally not
because-
go get it? That's so silly
Because
to
your
me.
chances of hitting those 2 cards in your 100-card deck without tutoring for it are not good to have them together.
Sure, then don't put tutors in the deck.
That's
I mean, if you do that, but then again, it's in my mind, if you're, and this kind of goes back to, if you're going to build the deck, but you want it to be casual, you don't have to intentionally build it bad to make it casual. You can build good decks that are casual.
right.
So again, if you're going to take up 2 card slots for Demonic Consultation and Thassa's Oracle, and you're going to try to say that it's a casual deck, and then the rest of your deck is bad just so you can say, well, I don't tutor for those, so if I get them, I just happen to draw into them to
but
win.
that's not at all
It's
what
bad.
that's not even close to
I'm
what
a
I said.
little more okay with what Duncan's saying if the idea is I just have to run into it.
Yeah, I just have to run into it.
I'm a little more okay with that. But
And I'm not saying like your deck should have that in there to be casual. I'm saying if somebody does a casual deck and has it in there, I'm not going to say you're not casual because you're not tutoring for it. You can, you can have decks that have
Yeah, but my point is, if someone has, let's say someone has that in their deck, right, and you play them 5 times and they win with that 2 of the 5 times, are you believing that they just happen to run in it 2 out of the 5 games?
Well, I mean, it's either that or they're cheating.
Yeah, we're on a different
Right. So
subject.
then my point is, what if they honestly did just run out of it 2 out of 5
Yeah,
times?
that-
And
which
now
could
you
happen.
have this negative view of them, like, we're playing casual, dude. Why are you doing that?
And the other
that's
thing-
my point. Like, if you're going to have it in there, it's known as a CEDH win. It's known as that. Everyone knows that if you have Thassa's Oracle and Demonic Consultation, that is a CEDH combo to win a game. If you have it in your deck, even if you run into it, people are going to assume that you went and tutored for it at some point or you went and got it on purpose to win. It's just what it is.
How would they assume that if you didn't play a tutor?
But
But
they
if
just think you're a cheater.
Yeah,
apparently.
that's different. We're on a different subject then. I think it's so I've had a lot of people say, why don't you put Crater Hoof Behemoth in that deck? Because I like attacky decks, right? So like, why isn't Crater Hoof Behemoth in your dinosaur deck? And it's like, because I have it in a deck already. And trust me, 1 Crater Hoof Behemoth is enough. I get to have it in 1 deck. I'm not putting it in the rest. And yeah, it might be powerful in that deck, but I'm trying to do other things.
Right,
I don't
but
want to win the same way with all my
the
decks.
way that you're building your decks to be thematic
Yeah.
and win with that theme is not intentionally building it bad. You're still
Right.
building a good deck that wins with the theme that you want to win with.
Right.
If I'm building, let's say I'm building Lazov and I put Thassa's Oracle and Demonic Consultation in there. Why? It's not on theme. It has nothing to do with that. It just happens to be those colors. So I'm going to put it in there so I can win another way. Like for me, if you're building a casual deck and you're putting in combos that are more competitive combos and they're known as more competitive combos to win games, and they're not themed at all with what your deck is doing or what you're trying to do with your deck, which if you're going to say, well, the ultimate theme of my deck is to win. Yeah, I get that. I'm talking about the actual theme of your deck. It to me, it just seems like you're going out of your way to try to intentionally do something. I'm a lot with Jeff on the fact that I have decks that I have built where I care more about their theme and them winning with their theme than I do about them actually winning. Like, I don't care that my ninja deck can have Demonic Consultation and Thassa's Oracle in it. I don't have it in there because it's not a ninja. I don't care. I want my ninjas to win. I don't want to win that way. Like, and again, that comes back to kind of our own definitions of what we think is casual. I mean, ultimately, sure, if you put no tutors in your deck and you had only Demonic Consultation and only Thassa's Oracle and no way to get to them at all in those two colors, which would be kind of hard to do, but if you decided to do that, sure. But ultimately, why not just take those two card slots and put in two cards that are better themed for your deck instead of just having one random
Because you have
win?
to have a win con. You have to have some way of winning.
Sure, but most...
I mean, you don't have to by casual. I guess you could have... I mean, there are hugs decks that they are pure hugs. And
Please
they have
don't build decks that don't have win cons.
Yeah, I know, but I'm
Because
saying...
we're just sitting around waiting for you to
then
dirtle.
that's why you put it in there.
100%.
But there
It's a
are
mercy killing. It's
there
done.
are plenty of other win cons that aren't seen as CEDH win cons that you can put in decks that are those two colors.
And that's fine. But I'm saying I would not say a deck that has those in them are automatically not casual.
And I agree with you, Duncan.
I'm not saying that they're automatically
you're
not-
following those other rules where the idea of CEDH is that you're designed to win a certain way every time. Your entire deck is designed to go do this, and it has 100 ways to go do it and 100 ways to protect that go do it. And it's just all built around consistency. Same thing.
I now
every
want a
time.
shirt that says "Protect the Go Do It."
Protect to go do it. But I have a good example of like a decision I'll make to
Sure.
that card I talked about. It's called Don't Move. 3 white sorcery. Destroy all tapped creatures until your next turn. Whenever a creature becomes tapped, destroy it. So it's a board wipe, and it's
That's
an
more than a
interesting
board wipe.
It's an interesting board wipe. Now I've played it many times. It's not. I haven't experienced it being very good. It's okay. There are better board wipes for sure, but I can't show you guys. But I have the full art version.
Well,
if you look it up,
You can show us, but you
it
can't
just
show
looks
them.
like a very cool dinosaur.
Yeah.
And so it's like that has to go in my deck.
Most people felt like that was a very good card because it also stops tap abilities. Nobody in the next turn is going to tap their stuff unless they really want
They're
it to go up.
creatures, at least, yeah.
But
But it
my-
only destroys tapped creatures. So
my
as a
point
board
is
wipe, it's
any
challenging.
deck can be played casual. All of my decks we've talked about are on the higher power, closer to CEDH than they are to the the farther end, the original EDH, the trudgy decks. But
Closer to
I
a
play
9
them
than they are a 4.
based on what I'm facing. If I'm facing things that are higher power, I play them higher power. If I'm not, then I don't. If I have, and I don't have Thassa's Oracle in a lot of decks because I think it's an obnoxious when I see it way too much. But I'm just saying, if I happen to have it in the deck and I happen to draw it, I just choose not to play it.
Right. And my point
So
is...
casual is, to me, it's not a deck. It's not a game format. It's a state of mind and how you go about your games.
I can't do what you said though. Like if if I have the best play in my hand, I don't understand. It's just the way I am.
Well, and
I
that's
don't
my
understand that
point,
playing,
is
so I just don't build my deck. to
Why
have
why
those.
put that card in there when you know you're not going to play it, when you can just
Because
put a
it
different
allows
card
me
in?
to play against people that have
But
that
you can
higher
play
power.
another card that could also potentially win you
But
the
if
game
he's
that's
not-
not considered
But if
more
he's not
powerful,
playing
or that
tutors,
isn't.
if he's not playing tutors, it doesn't.
But he's
matter.
not playing tutors, though.
True. But
Yeah,
his
but
last example.
I
And
play
most-
less tutors than most people I know.
Right, but because you play blue, so your tutoring is just drawing 40 cards a turn. Like, that's tutoring, essentially. You're getting...
that is 100% true.
Yeah.
If
It's-
you're drawing 40
drawing-
cards and you're like, I didn't tutor.
I
for
I
it.
didn't
I
tutor
wish
for it.
my
I only
games
drew
were
half
as
my
good for
deck
me.
and I got it, guys. I don't know how it happened. 4 games in a row,
I
but it
wish
happened.
I could do the things you guys accuse me of.
Oh, stop it.
I
You're
have
silly.
drawn 40 cards, but if I could do that regularly, oh,
You, in almost every single deck that you have blue in, you draw at least 5 to 10 cards a turn. At least.
No, to be fair, he doesn't always do that.
At
But the point
least.
is valid, Duncan. If someone says, I didn't tutor for it, but their whole deck is built around card draw, getting to that
Right.
win con, it's really
but that's the thing.
seedy.
My
It's a
decks
moot
aren't-
point.
I put those in there so I have a win con for those higher power games. I don't want to play that. It's also like when I play Teferi Master of Time. Yes, it has an ult that says I get to take 2 extra turns. I don't want to ever do that. I will do it if I have to. I cannot stand extra turns. I wish they would get rid of extra turns. I think it's an extremely selfish play to do extra turns. And but it can technically do that. Am I going to? No, not unless I have to.
Well, you better have some extra turn cards in your Nadu deck because that's definitely how that deck's going to win.
No, it doesn't need an extra
It doesn't
turn.
need it.
It doesn't
just
even
keeps
need its
going.
turn. I can do it on your turn.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I understand that. But I'm just saying it. If you definitely want to make sure that no one else wins, you
Right.
throw a couple of those in there. I'm going to take
Yeah,
four.
those are too high
four
mana.
extra turns.
I have a 1.64 mana curve. I don't want anything.
That's
I don't like this new
That's
Duncan.
exactly how you build Nadu. Yeah,
Yeah.
very low to the ground.
But anyway, so that to me, that's the thing. Casual is how you play, not how you build.
I just feel like
not-
it's silly for you to put cards in your deck that you're not going to intentionally play because you're trying to
But
play
this
more
is
casual.
his opinion. It's our opinion of casual. Like, that's his opinion of casual. My opinion of casual is I'm going to play to win every single time because I know that. I'm going to build my deck differently. I'm not going to put the cards in.
My decks are a Swiss Army knife. I want them to be a Swiss Army knife. I want them to be, I can use this for whatever I want. I can use it to play against you guys. I can play it against Andrew Lizard and that crew.
Yeah, but what I don't
can use the same
understand
deck.
is
You have
if
90
you're playing,
decks.
Let's
Just
play.
pick a
Let's say
different
you're
one.
playing a deck against me, and I'm playing.
It's like children. You have your favorite.
Let's say I'm
Sloan.
playing my humans deck, okay? But I'm winning, and I'm about to win, and you draw 20 cards, and you draw into your Thassa's Oracle win.
Yeah.
You're not playing it.
Oh no, I'll play it then if you're.
Well,
about
then
to
I
win.
don't know what you're talking. This is ridiculous. Then that's I would say if you said at that point because you're playing humans, even though you're winning, I'm going to choose not to play that because I drew 20 cards and went to the Thassa Oracle win. Then I would understand.
Why is your win more casual when it's on the same turn?
Because I'm probably attacking you with 20 creatures that have been out there for 3 or 4 turns.
Yeah.
I'm not winning out of nowhere. You saw it coming. You had ample opportunity to deal with it.
You have counter spells. Use them.
And
Not- in mono white, you got like 2.
yeah. So I think I don't know.
I mean,
If I'm winning on the same turn you were about to win on, who cares? Now, if I sat on it the whole game and waited till you're about to win, and then was like, "No, I'm not going to let you win now," that's different. But if I draw into it on the turn you're about to win, I'm going to win.
Yeah, then I don't know what
But
difference there
blue,
is.
you told me then how blue has a you can see this coming win.
What?
What's blue's you can see this coming win?
Blue has lower powered win cons.
Like what?
100%.
they have the mono blue guy every single time you cast an instant sorcery. You create a 2/2 blue flying drake. That's an easy. I can see it coming. You
Well-
put him out. You start casting instant sorceries. You're building up an army very slowly. It's a very. I can see this
But I'm
coming.
There
saying- okay,
are-
well, so let me rephrase it. In a spell slinger deck, what is a casual
Duncan,
win?
Hey,
there-
the guy
That's
who
not
creates
Spellslinger.
that is Spellslinger. The
It
whole
is.
theme of it is casting instants
That's
and
aggro.
sorceries.
You're gonna win. You're gonna win with aggro. You're not winning by spell slinging.
You are winning by Spellslinging.
So hold on. It's tough because you're asking a question in the middle, but we haven't had time to prepare. I don't play blue all that often. I don't know, but there are decks and build types that are blue that are lower powered that aren't playing Thassa's Oracle and they win.
Well, and to be
aren't combo
clear,
decks.
like I said, I don't like Thassa's Oracle. If I'm gonna win through a similar mechanic, I'm gonna play Omniscience and Enter the Infinite, which together are 23 mana.
Right, but again, one of them is free because after you cast Omniscience, Enter an Infinite
But
becomes
they're
free.
23 mana,
Sure, but again,
and sometimes I do it the other way. Sometimes I enter the Infinite and then, throw down all my rocks.
I
and play.
intentionally cast it backwards to spend more mana. No, I get what you're saying though. But again, my point is that if you're going to build a deck and you're going to say it's casual, most people will exclude you from this. But most people are not going to impulse control themselves to not just win when they get the win combination in their hand. Right. Jeff is literally saying, I will not do that. I'm going to build my deck to try to win. So if there are instant win combos that are stronger and faster, but they aren't thematic, I'm not going to put them in my deck. And that is more of a casual mindset than I'm going to fill my deck with fast win cons and just not play them until it's later in the game. Then I can mercy kill everybody. Like that to me is backwards. But again, if you do a good job of not doing that, of not just instantly winning as soon as you draw it, but I think a lot of it is because you do have a lot of decks and you have a lot more people that you play with and you have a lot more playing opportunity than we do. So you have the ability to decide when you want to basically murder everybody with card draw or not, or murder everybody with your combo or not. So I think
also we have fun playing with Duncan. Playing with Duncan is a lot of fun.
I mean,
we
don't
can
speak
all
for me.
we could all disagree on what casual is. and we just sat at my house and played for 7 hours, and there weren't really a lot of issues.
No.
So
I mean, at the end of the day,
if anybody was an issue, it was probably
to
me.
be clear, we did play our own decks after we played the pre-con.
And if there was an issue that night, it was probably me because I played enchantments, and I just happened to have an amazing start. It just went nuts.
Well,
I think they just gave up after turn 6. It was like
because you played a 2-drop
pointless.
commander that literally just feeds off of herself, which is the silliest enchantment deck you can.
Well, and it
Dream
doesn't
White.
always do what it did that night, but it was awesome.
No, it almost always does that.
It's pretty consistent.
It's it's a very low to the ground, very consistent. And as you said before, enchantments are bonker strong enchantment deck.
So are artifacts.
So right, but none of us played our artifact decks. But I mean, ultimately, I understand what the point you're making is. If someone doesn't intentionally go and get those wins, I would see that as casual. Sure, I get that. But in my mind, why not just put 2 other cards in there that you can play every time, and then you can still put tutors in, and it's still not overpowered? Like, that's my counter argument to kind of that idea. But if you have the willpower and the control to not go tutor for your win as soon as you have a tutor, or to not play your win as soon as you get it on turn 4, I mean,
so
sure.
And that's another thing too. Like the Thassa's Oracle, I don't play a lot of blue black.
Yeah,
but so I don't usually do the demonic consultation Thassa's Oracle. I usually
right. I mean,
do like paradigm shift or
in the one CEDH deck I built,
Flash,
Kess, which is blue, black, red. It's in there. U3, I might be going to the tournament tonight with Duncan. Potentially, I'm still debating. But U3 is blue, red, and I might throw her in there because I have Enter the Infinite in that deck where I draw my whole library. Then I could just drop her, draw my last 2 cards, and I win the game.
You should just play your ninja.
Ninja deck is pretty. I feel like I'd have to do more changes to that one to make it comparative to U3, because U3 I can literally have him go off on turn 1 and potentially win.
Right.
But
anyway, so that just kind of what I wanted to get to here.
Yeah,
casual is not your deck. It's not your play group. It's how you go about it. It's how you play your game.
In your opinion.
In my opinion, I think in most people would agree. I don't think
they would agree at all. I think they would agree that casual is how you build your deck. I think that's what most people would think.
But they wouldn't know how you built your deck. They know
sure
how
they
you play.
do. That's why you rate it power 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Yeah, but it's...
I mean, I get the rating. I think what Duncan is saying is the rating system is arbitrary because your 4 might be someone else's 6.
I get that it's not arbitrary. It is dependent on the person. It's relative.
No, it is arbitrary. It is 100% arbitrary. Just like my saying 100% is arbitrary.
It's not. We can change what words mean, but it's relative to the person. But if you guys talk about what a 9 is, you can get an idea of where it is. Idea. You're not going to get perfect, but
I would say if you want a definition of casual for me, it would be your casual is going to be based off of your play group. Because what your play group says is casual is what you are going to build
for some
as
people,
casual.
that's CEDH.
Right. And that's my point.
like grief.
Like
that's true.
Blizzard and Andrew
no
and Duncan, when I sit down and play with them, I am not pulling anything out that's less than Prosper and Calamax. Like those are like 2 decks I will probably play with them. I played my soldier deck once, but luckily we had 5 people in that pod, so I was able to win because people couldn't pick on me as much. But that one's a little too slow, but it won that game just because I got out of control once my commander came out.
Because people didn't focus on you.
Right, because there was 4
Yeah.
other people, so it was hard. But once I got a couple of soldiers out and they're swinging for like 10-10 each, like it was, and they had trample and vigilance, it was bad. So, but I would say ultimately for casual, the definition of it is going to be defined by the people you play with. Some people think casual is going to be 8 to 9 decks. Some people think casual is going to be 3 to 4 decks. Again, using an arbitrary scaling system.
I mean, that's part of the problem. When you go out in the wild,
right,
you could bring out a deck that you could get most commander players to call it a 7, and you pull it out. But if the whole rest of the table's playing 4s
or 5s,
4s and 5s,
yeah,
but
they're
in your
playing
group
chair
that
decks.
Your 7 is a 4 or 5.
I mean, you guys say that, but Duncan, we've been to conventions. We've played at different shops. I can't remember too many times someone sat down and had a deck that was just pub stomping us.
Oh no, see, here's the thing. You say we've been to conventions. I've been to many conventions.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen it. It happens.
But how often? Not super often. It's typically that's the person.
If you were
that's the
to
issue.
every hour pull everybody playing at a convention that was playing in like a command zone type area.
Yeah.
You could find at least 2-3 tables where they say, yeah, somebody did that.
Yeah, but again, so you're saying 2 or 3 tables, so
In
you're
an
saying
hour.
at least 80% of the people there have a basic understanding
Yes.
of power
Yep,
level.
yep.
That's pretty good.
But I would even say at the shop that we go to, because we go to a little more often than you do, there is
Yeah.
a table that sits back there and they play 6-player pods with very, very low to the ground decks, but their games take forever. Not because they have 6 people in them, but because all their decks are very
Not
low to the
good.
ground. But for each other, they're very competitive.
Literally, at least one of them literally did not know what dockside is.
But
I've told
for,
that story, but I'm
right.
just saying that's how low power we're talking.
But
Yeah,
and
no,
they're
sure.
But for each other, those decks are very competitive, and they would probably think they're stronger than they are.
So can I tell you though, my favorite story from that table of those 6 players? The girl from that table played in one of the CEDH tournaments with light paws and did well.
Yeah,
Did quite well.
Well, Light Pulse is a great
And just went through the
monocolor.
bulk.
Well,
Just went
sometimes-
to build the deck to get ready, she just went through the bulk the store had, the under $1 cards, and just built it that way, and it did very well. And I was like, that's awesome.
Sometimes the casual decks can do really well against CEDH if you can get them to the long game.
Yeah,
But
especially Light Pulse, because Light Pulse is based on
Yeah.
enchantments, and it's
It just
very
keeps-
low to the
it
ground.
keeps
It's very
drawing cards,
Yeah,
it
it just
keeps-
keeps
yeah.
going.
Yeah,
So
well, and that's the thing. From the very beginning, she was doing well. It wasn't like people left her alone and then, whoops, I won.
yeah.
You know, but
So I would say ultimately myself, casual is going to be based off of your group and what you guys kind of define as casual. So
probably true. And I think it's going to be difficult in the wild. But like Jeff pointed out, we all usually figure it out.
yeah.
We get there. Speaking of Jeff, Aggro Jeff, what's aggravating you?
So on this one, I think I'm going to go with this one here because you're aggravating me. So I think this is, I know I was going to do a different one, but I just
me?
feel like, yeah, Duncan, you're aggravating me. So work with Duncan, spend time with Duncan, and you might be like, well, what's aggravating you about Duncan?
It's Duncan.
That Duncan is always right on random things that human
Trivia.
beings shouldn't always know.
Yeah.
And he knows them. They're so random, it's hard to think of an example, but sometimes we'll be in discussions and he'll say this, someone will be like, what's this random fact? And he'll know it. And they're like, I'm not sure. And at this point now I could just be like, no, stop arguing. He's 100% right. Whatever stupid thing he said, it's probably right. And it's very annoying. But like, then you want to know something reasonable. Like sometimes he knows it, sometimes he doesn't. But definitely if it's some random fact, he knows it.
Well, I thought you were annoyed because I told you were going to not enjoy buying your Modern Horizons 3 boxes. You'd regret your purchase, and you did.
Yeah, that was annoying too. And you were right. And I did regret my purchases, all of them. It was a lot of money too.
Yeah.
Could have just bought the cards I wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or you could have bought a $109 bundle of Assassin's Creed and you're not going to be disappointed at all.
I'm glad I was able to find you that deal because
I was sitting there waiting. I was sitting on it because I was trying to get it from the shop because we did do a segment where it's like, if you can, try to buy from your local LGS so it stays around. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to try to be supportive. Apparently their rep for Magic was out the week that they started opening up the pre-orders. So he didn't show up at all and he wasn't going to get there until like this week. So I don't even think did you check last night?
Well, you say this week and that'll be the week after.
Oh yeah, technically that'll be the week after. So the week of the dropping week, the week of the 5th, next July 1st, I think is when he said that they would know for sure.
No, they said they know this week. So
this
the
week, that's
before.
right. Yeah, that's right.
So this weekend we can order for next week's release.
Yeah.
That is unfortunate, but I did find you on TCG. They were
Right.
having a
Which
sale
was nice
at the
that-
one vendor, and
Yeah, because the Card Kingdom one
They
that I
also
went to.
haven't paid for that.
Yeah,
no. Well, it's not TCG. It was one vendor.
it was a vendor through TCG.
Yeah, but they still make money.
Yeah, sure.
TCG,
But-
if you hear this,
Yeah, the Card Kingdom ad that I got, I opened it up, and then that night I went to go check on it. It was already sold out. I was like, oh, well, that sucks.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, that's good though. It means that these things are working. I think it wasn't a set that was drawing in the pre-orders, but
yeah.
Anyway, that is very far from what was aggravating Jeff, which was me. But I thank you for that. It makes me feel
it's
good.
like
It's nice to have the heat taken off me once a week.
Accomplice salt. It's like
Every other one has been about Sloan, but this one
he's
is.
in general probably more annoying than you.
I mean,
And I've
I'd
known
agree
him
with that
longer, so
statement.
he's been aggravating me longer.
That's true.
Yeah.
I've known him since I was a wee lad.
I don't know.
You were really aggravating.
I can't say I agree with your aggravation, but I appreciate it. So,
I don't care if you agree.
but I'm
The fact
always
that
right.
you might not agree aggravates me.
But let's move on to that doesn't do what you think it does. And today we're going to talk about planeswalkers and how they get to use an ability when they successfully come out.
Yeah,
No, I love this, too. This is so awesome.
This is actually an interesting one. I'm glad that we're doing this one.
But what I realized is even the people that know that when you cast a planeswalker on your turn, it gets to go off.
Yeah.
I don't think they know why. I think some of them may, if you say it, they're like, oh yeah, of course, but they don't think about it.
Which is interesting too that we're talking about this because I have a point. If you don't touch on it, I want to bring up about it. But go ahead with
there's two things I want to say.
explanation.
So the first is, why do they get to use their ability once with no interaction if you successfully cast it?
I think we all know the answer to this.
Well, we do
because you said so.
Yeah, well, that's true.
And you
And I'm always right. So there you go. But no, it's because they don't have priority. You have priority. The spell has been successfully cast. The next thing that triggers that priority passage will be you attempting to use their loyalty ability.
Right.
And this confuses people, even sometimes more veteran players, when they cast a commander with flash. And they'll be like, oh, I get one use. No, you don't. It's still sorcery speed. The reason you get to do it on your turn, if you do it immediately after, is because you haven't passed priority again.
Correct.
So I just thought it was important to point out why it works. I think a lot of people know that it works, but they don't think about why. And therefore it causes them to think, oh, well, when I cast it with flash or something like that.
Because, and I think too, a lot of times because of the way you just worded it, people are like, well, whenever I cast a planeswalker, I get to use an ability. Again, because of the way it's worded, if you are doing it on someone else's turn, no, you don't.
Yeah.
And it's so confusing because we've kind of
now if you
tied it together so much in our head, like, oh, I cast a planeswalker, I get to use the ability.
And here's the thing. Even if you did flash,
right,
like Master of Time, you still wouldn't be able to. If you were able to flash in Master of Time where you can use its abilities at instant speed, you still wouldn't be immediately able to because you don't have priority.
Right, because priority went all the way around and it goes back to the active player.
Right. So,
But what's cool about this is if when you're playing that Planeswalker deck and you have doubling season out and you play your card, it's too late. If you didn't counter it, it's done. It's happening.
Yeah.
You're getting the super. It's a lot of fun.
But here's the thing, though. No, it's not.
You can stifle that.
But so this brings up the point I wanted to talk about. So, like we just mentioned,
You can't stifle it, of course. Yes,
they are sorcery speed. So if you say, I'm not activating the ability, you are then passing priority. And then if you say, okay, I'm going to cast the spell, and I say, great, I'm going to blow up your planeswalker, you've already passed your priority to use the ability because you went to cast something else.
Right.
Yeah, just
and because
don't do
that's
that.
Because that's at sorcery. But my point is sometimes what people will do is they'll play a planeswalker and then they go to cast a spell and then they want to use the planeswalker ability after they've used that spell. But the problem is because you've passed priority on using the planeswalker in that intermediate time, I can kill your planeswalker because its ability is at sorcery speed.
Yeah, you can. If someone does that, then sure.
But there are times where people will do that. They'll cast a planeswalker, they'll cast an instant, and then they'll use the on the stack. But no, that's at sorcery speed. You can't use that in that way.
I haven't really seen that. I'm sure it could happen, but that's people not understanding it's at sorcery speed.
And you can't also, in reaction to me targeting and blowing up your planeswalker, you also can't activate an ability on it because it's at sorcery speed. So you can't, if I'm blowing it up with an instant, you can't do anything in response on your turn to use its ability. Which is another key thing that I feel like people look over, the fact that they are sorcery speed abilities. So keep that in mind if you're casting your planeswalkers and you need to do it in a certain order, that as soon as you pass your priority on
the time that ability does happen, I think, is if someone has doubling season and they want to play multiple planeswalkers.
Right.
I could see how they're not going to see it as ordering it where I play it, use its ability, play it, use its ability.
Right.
I want to play everything out and then choose what order to use the abilities in. But you're honestly going to have to do it as his ability being used as you're playing him. Is kind of how you have to think about it. But I could see in that scenario. But I would encourage players, if you see someone doing that in casual play, help them understand the correct order to do it. You could use it as a gotcha moment if you want, but you could also just teach them.
But I would also, and the reason why I bring that up is because sometimes people forget, unless you have the certain artifacts or things out that say you can use them at instant speed, your planeswalker's abilities, they are sorcery speed. So you can't do anything in reaction if someone's killing your with an instant speed thing. You can't do anything in reaction to it, like use their abilities, because it's their sorcery speed.
Yeah. Of course, Master of Time, its abilities are at instant.
Correct. So that one is the exception, and there are I think artifacts that do it too that allow you to use them at instant speed.
Right.
Well, and I think there's a planeswalker that gives all the planeswalker abilities to it. So that might send that instant speed ability to all of them. And I feel like maybe there's a super that does it too.
Potentially. But
outside of those things, yes. It's sorcery speed. You only can do it automatically if you do it right away.
Right after you cast
it. It's Teferi Temporal Archmage. His super says you get an emblem with you may activate loyalty abilities of planeswalker you control on any player's turn anytime you could cast an instant.
Right. So, but anyway, that's just one I thought was something
that's a great one, Duncan.
Many people know it, but they don't know why, and the knowing why helps you prevent mistakes. So
agreed.
And knowing is half the battle.
Yes, go Joe. So let's talk about the main topic, cards that have been errata'd. So cards that when they first came out, they said one thing, and Wizards said that's either not what we meant or that's not the way we want it to work. And so they do an errata, which means they change how the card is actually worded.
Yeah, I have the definition here from the MTG Wiki. Are official changes to rules, text, or type line on cards, often to clarify card effects, or to preserve the effects of cards as the rules of the game change.
Right. So this isn't just rule changes. They're things where what the card reads may not fully tell you what it does.
Right.
Okay. So my favorite example is Oubliette. Oubliette is a black enchantment, and it used to say it's an enchantment aura, and you put it on an opponent's creature.
I think it's just an enchantment, and I don't think it's an aura. I think it's like Oblivion Ring.
Okay, maybe.
I think
regardless,
it is too.
Regardless, it used to say exile target creature, and it doesn't return until this
Oubliette leaves the field.
Oubliette leaves the field. They have now, and this was a direct, this is a deliberate change. When they reprinted it a few years ago, they said that's not, because you cast it on a commander, and now the commander can just go to the command zone. We don't like that. So now it says target creature phases out,
right,
which is much harder to deal with. It made the card much better,
right,
and now it's one of my favorite pieces of removal.
So in this article on MTG Wiki, what they say is there's two types of errata that they usually deal with. So there's functional, which is the functionality change, what the card did from its original printing, or there's a power errata, changing cards with errata so they work differently, are kind of the ideas that they have when they're doing this to cards. So Oubliette's a good one. Another one that actually was kind of funny is the Howling Mind, which you brought up.
Yeah.
Because the original text for Howling Mind was, at the beginning of each player's upkeep, draw 2 cards, unless Howling Mind is tapped, I believe, is what the original was.
No, that's the new word.
That's the new word. That's right. Okay, that's what it's backwards.
It didn't used to say it. It used to just say on each player's upkeep, they can draw 2 cards.
At the beginning of each player's upkeep, they may draw 2 cards. And then they errata it to say at the beginning of each player's upkeep, they may draw 2 cards or draw an additional card if Howling Mind is not tapped.
Right. So that changed the way that the card works, because now you can tap it in response using different mechanics, and thereby other people don't get the benefit, only you get the benefit. So, and there is a bunch of artifacts. You can look them up, but there's a bunch that they only work when they're untapped. And the original versions may not say that on them.
Shouldn't this be on the Gatherer, though, then? The change?
Yeah, you go to Oracle Text.
Okay.
Yep. So on MTG's Gatherer site, it'll show you the regular wording on the card, but if you click Oracle, it shows you the errata'd text on the card and what it actually should say, or sometimes what the new printing says.
Right.
Another one that people have brought up is Kyranos, God of Storms. Kyranos can target a player or creature, is the way the card works. But the errata is it can also do planeswalkers, because when it was printed, planeswalkers
Didn't exist. Right.
So they made that change because that's
a huge change.
yeah, it's huge.
Right.
And it doesn't say it on the card, and it causes a lot of confusion. People try and, I target your planeswalker. No, you can't do that. Yes, I can. And you got to.
Yeah.
So it is annoying, unfortunately, but these are things that have just happened as Magic's come out. One that I really wanted to mention, there's an entire keyword that they got rid of.
Right. We were talking about this at our
It's called substance.
at our
And
pre-show
substance was...
Never
it's
heard of it.
Yeah, it's a keyword that they did. It was in one specific set, and it's because the way they wrote the cards didn't fully make the new keyword that they wanted to function, or the new ability they wanted to function. So they added this keyword as kind of a way of adding rules that let it work the way they wanted it to work.
Yeah.
And since then, Magic said, we're not doing that. We're not having a keyword that's only there to fix because we didn't build the card right. So they've eroded it, and now substance doesn't do anything.
It only existed in Oracle rules text. Yeah.
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 But they've eroded it now, and it doesn't, it's a non-thing.
So it was never on the card.
No.
No, it was a
That's very
keyword that
interesting.
they added to Oracle text that they then got rid of.
Yeah, they got rid of it later.
Yeah.
And the whole thing is it doesn't do anything. That's,
Yeah.
So
I think the thing that errata probably affects the most is the creature types that they started doing, which we brought up.
Yeah, because that's super confusing because you might
Right.
not know that in your typal deck, kindred deck, that you have a creature that is different than or is the same. It's
Yeah,
very
one
confusing.
of the biggest ones that they did, and I think they did it more recently when they started releasing more of these dog and cat cards, was hounds are now dogs. So if you put a hound in there and you have a creature that says dogs you control get +1/+1, it counts for the hound. It's now considered a dog. And so they did that. In some of the instances it made sense. I think it was good. But in other ways, they actually took away more creature types from creatures. So they actually get less things they can hit now, which may not be as big of a deal because there might not have been a lot of them to begin with. But the fact that you're taking away creature types, to me, seems weird if they already had it. I think one of the ones we mentioned at our meeting was the Goblin Lord or whatever he was, where he was like a
Lord was his type before.
Yeah, he was a
There was a Lord type.
Yeah,
And now I think Lord's a super type, even if it's even a type anymore.
Yeah.
He's a goblin. He should have been a goblin. He's always been a goblin.
Right. So, but it's just weird, like
But it didn't say goblin.
Right.
He wasn't considered a goblin, but they've eroded it, so he is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wish they would just. I think what Johnny's saying is, I wish they would have just kept them the way they were. And if you wanted more dogs, print more dogs.
I mean, that's one way,
it just
or
gets
just
out of control, and then you have these things where they've printed them, and nothing cares about them for the past 12 years or something. And they're like,
Right.
they wanted to make things more inclusive, and to make things. There was a lot of people that wanted dog tribal. They were for this. They wanted dog tribal.
Right.
There weren't enough dogs. Well, now hounds are dogs. There's a lot of hounds. Now you have dog.
Right.
Well,
And
I have a dog tribal deck, the dogs and cats deck. So I kind of like it, but at the same time, if you wanted more dogs, just print more dogs.
Well, and I think the
It's
reason
not
why
that
was,
hard.
I think a lot of reason why too is like, why is there a difference between a hound and a dog? Like, why is that different to begin with?
Just because originally they called it hound.
Right,
That's the only
exactly. Which
difference.
seems,
That's
so
arbitrary.
yeah, like my point would be, we'll just reprint that card and with the dog type on it then. Like, problem solved.
The reason
Like,
why
just do
it's-
that.
The reason why it's not arbitrary is because what it does is it gives an advantage to the person who's going to go and study and have this more difficult knowledge to gain. So the person
That's the way
who's
magic
not,
is.
right. Well, I think there should be less of that.
That's the whole point of magic. The more knowledge you have, the more you look into the older cards, the more powerful stuff you're going to build. That to me is what magic is.
But you don't even know how to play the game. Like you could be you're
do
there
too.
looking at the card. I don't know what
That's
the heck this
rude.
card
Yeah,
does.
Duncan, you don't know how to play.
Well, Duncan knows how to play, but other people don't. And so I'm saying, like, Magic should really. I get that they could do these things, but just why? Make it simpler. You're already the most.
Yeah, just build
complicated.
better precons so
just
people don't
don't-
have to make their own decks.
yeah.
You guys are ridiculous. They're just more complicated. It's just they make the game more and more complicated.
I do
It's
get
stupid.
that. I get that I definitely see that side of the argument. I get that it's like just trying to make the game a little bit more simple, I guess is the right way to say it, more simple so people can get into it easier. And then there are still those advanced levels where if you get into it deeper and deeper, you can get better and better, obviously. But I think a counter argument to that would be, well, what if I'm a person who's been collecting cards for 15 years, and by them doing this, now I have these cards that used to not really be viable, but now they're viable because now they're bunched in with this other thing. Like, I think that's maybe the counter argument to it was, well, we don't want to make these people who've been collecting for 15 years, oh, well, your collections are basically invalid now because we're just going to make all these other cards instead.
I think it was more about
They weren't-
making older cards playable than it was about bringing more
And that's
cards in.
100% what they did. But I don't think it would have made them invalid. They were already invalid. It just would have left them the way they were. It's not the worst thing in the world, but it is annoying to be like, oh, hey, this you could have added that to your deck because it's a hound and now it's a dog, and you're like, oh, I didn't know. My deck could have been better the whole time, and I had no idea because I didn't know this obscure rule.
I do think they aren't doing this anymore. For instance, they now have mercenaries. Mercenaries is inclusive
to assassins, rogue, pirates, and warlocks.
Right. So they could have done canines, right? They could have done canines, which included, and I think nowadays that's the way they do it. They now make a canine super type that includes the other.
Yeah,
And that's
canines
better.
you control are this to get vigilance and +3, +0. Canines
and
include
you can
hounds,
even
dogs.
reprint that hound and just put canine next to it, and now solve the problem, right? Matter of fact, you could have reprinted that hound and just put dog instead of hound. That to me, that also would have been fine.
Well,
Sloan said that 5 minutes ago.
I said that a couple minutes ago. But my point is for
good
those
idea
people,
5
you're
minutes
still
ago.
you're still telling them, hey, just go buy this newer card. That's the same card that you currently have in your hands, but buy this one instead because it says dog on it.
No, because they could still use the one that says hound, but for the new player, they're not missing out.
Right, and I still think that
They did in a lot of cases.
I still think they aren't
Did
missing
they
out.
do that with the hounds?
I'm guarantee you they've reprinted hounds that say dog.
I mean, they could have. But even my point would be most newer players. Let's say, for example, I'm a new guy. I'm coming into the game for the first time, and I'm listening to this awesome podcast called Commander's Pod, and they're like, "Hey, here's some ways that we build decks," and you're like, "Oh, that's cool. I think I'm going to build my first Commander deck." Do you think that they're just going to go out and start buying cards and putting them together? No, they're probably going to look up stuff if they've listened to any advice from anyone who plays Commander.
Write to us and we'll help them.
Or they can send us, hey, I want to build this deck. Can you guys help me build it? But my point is, when they go to look up online and they're like, man, this is a dog themed deck. Why is there a bunch of hounds in here? They would probably get to the point, or hopefully they would look into it and be like, oh, it's because hounds are now considered dogs. Okay, cool. Like, I don't think it's really hard to get from hound to dog being that, or whatever the case may be. I do think the new way, I guess we can say they're doing it with, which is they're creating these category types and saying all these creatures are this type. I think that's a cool way to do it, and that makes it a little bit easier to build these, I'm going to say tribal, I don't care, tribal decks that you want to build. And I think the cool thing about that specifically is it lets you get a little bit broader too, right? So you can now build a mercenaries deck, which is assassins and pirates, because those are both considered mercenaries, right? So I think it's slightly maybe a better way of doing it, because it allows you to bunch things together. So you can potentially make a couple of different types of cards that aren't as good actually pretty good, because now they can all be in the same deck together and work coherently, as mercenaries. So I think the new way they're doing it, if that's the way they're going to go, I would definitely commend them on it. I think that's a better way of doing it instead of this old way, which is we're just going to go back and change rule text. Because I think the classic example, which we talked about a couple episodes ago, Lion's Eye Diamond, is a reason why this doesn't work, right? Because they've changed it, I think, 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, and
it's back to the original way it was originally thought it was done. So it's like they just keep changing it back and forth, and they can't land on it through this process. And they're back on one version right now. We'll see how long it lasts this time. But it's one of those things where I think it's a good thing, because it helps bring these cards that may not be as good right now because they're in this weird category that doesn't exist anywhere. You're adding them to it. So great. Now they're playable maybe. Mm-hmm. And back to your thing of you like to build decks that are more themed rather than powerhouses. You rather go with the theme. Adding some of these old hound cards that are really old school, is kind of cool, because you get to show off these older cards that probably weren't useful.
Yeah, it's
But
fun.
now they're
It
actually
can be
good.
Fun.
Yeah, it can be fun.
definitely
So,
be fun.
but I definitely think doing the categories now is probably the way they're going to go, and I think that's a good way of doing it too. So
They just have to be careful that they're not like The Office with Steve Carell, where he says snip, snap, snip, snap, snip, snap. Like, don't keep going back and forth. Make a decision. Stick to it.
Well, so we just kind of want to bring this point to light for some of the newer players and point out when you play cards, somebody may say, actually that has errata. It doesn't work the way you think it does. You might want to look up some of the older cards. You go on Gatherer, you click on Oracle. It'll tell you the Oracle text, which is how it's meant to be read now.
yeah, the most current version, because that's the other thing too. If you are looking up rulings for cards, make sure you're reading the most recent ruling. Don't read the old one. Like, don't be like, I found this one from 2012, but that was 12 years ago. There's a chance it could have changed in the last 12 years. Just make sure you're looking at the most recent article or the most recent updated Oracle text for a card.
And if you're going to go look at old cards, be prepared to be annoyed because isn't it Mistopheles or something like that?
James of Mistopheles?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. There are some cards out there where you're like, I could read this 10 times. I don't know what this is saying.
Yeah, reading the card does not always explain it.
No,
yeah,
it doesn't.
unfortunately, you needed an English degree, and even then, I think you still couldn't get it right.
You need an English degree with the rules of Magic.
Well, since we're on it, I guess we'll bring up the two most notorious. Jeff's favorite card, which is Necropotence.
Yeah.
The original writing of that is, I mean, it's basically a novel.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make any sense. And then,
and that was the first time we tried to figure out how to make it work.
Right,
Was based
and-
off of that wording.
and actually, the second one, Jeff also did this one too. And this was the first time it was Sylvan Library because for some reason he bought the older version.
It was cheaper.
Yeah, it was cheap. We couldn't figure out how to use it I think we spent almost the rest of that game just trying to make sure we were doing it right.
Yeah.
We had no idea.
So they have, again, credit to them. They've had fixed word text at least with this system and made it better by making it more clear to the player. So they have done a good job of that. But yeah, when they change creature types randomly and they say they're included now, or they change rules on how the card works and then they change it again, it gets a little convoluted.
Well, and their wording has gotten better and worse throughout the years, right?
Yeah.
Because they'll say things like, if you discard it and it's not a land,
right.
why don't you just say if you discard a non-land,
Right.
right? That's much easier.
Yeah.
Less words.
I will say Croxa is one of the ones that's difficult because he has weird wording like that. He's my black-red discard deck.
And sometimes you get like double negatives and you're like, why did you do that?
Because they want to make it positive.
Yeah. But anyway.
I'm positive they're pissing me off. That's for sure.
Yeah. So, keep your eye out for things that may not work the way they were originally written.
Yeah.
And if something's really confusing, look at the Oracle text. A lot of
Yeah,
times it'll
especially if you're going to
clear
play
it up.
some of these older cards, I would definitely recommend looking at Oracle text, making sure it works the way you think it does. For sure.
But Sloan, you got any other tips for the youngins?
Yeah. So one of the things we talked about this episode was casual play. And one of the things I would encourage you, being a newer player, is finding maybe a channel that does video for games that they play to look and see what their play style is. And what I'd recommend is I would look up some that are more casual channels that play casually. There are some competitive channels that play competitive EDH decks. And if you're trying to figure out like, hey, I'm going to build a deck, one of the things that I always like to do is I like to look up and see if people have played that deck before. And I like to see how it functioned. And if most of the channels I'm looking up are coming up with competitive deck plays, and it's probably a competitive type deck, so be wary if you're going to try to play it as casual. But the other thing is too, you can see how other people, how they built it, the way they did the interactions, especially you might find one like, I did not see that one before. I think that's cool, and I think I want to add that one to this deck. But I highly encourage you going and finding videos of people playing Commander format games. The two casual ones that I recommend are Commander Versus and the Command Zone. They do a really good job of visually showing the card. They do a good job of taking their time when they're playing, so you can kind of see how everything's rolling out. The Command Zone does a really good job because they have cutaways to where they're kind of explaining what they're going through while they're playing it. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, they have really high quality content.
They
too.
do. And then the other one that is the reason why I like Commander Versus because they kind of do it in seasons. So they have like a point system where they're trying to get points. So you can kind of play. You see these 4 guys play for 15 games, and they do pre-cons and they do updated pre-cons, and so they kind of play with some stuff that you'll see a lot. And then the more competitive ones is I think there's one called the Dankest Dungeon where they play like competitive level decks. There's another one called what's it called? Oh,
I mean, we have the internet now.
Playing
Just
with
type
Power.
in CDH
Yeah.
gameplay. It's
yeah.
not gonna
Play
be hard.
what was
Playing with power.
Playing with Power, I think is what it is, where they do specifically competitive style decks. So you can look up these channels, you can watch them play these commanders. You could see that, as well as when you look them up, a lot of them have links to each of those decks, so you can kind of see how they built it, and you can see like this is more of what a casual deck for this commander looks like to potentially a competitive version of this commander. You can kind of see the differences. And one of the things I would say is when you're doing that and you're looking it up, if your deck list falls more with the competitive list, you might want to potentially pull it back a little bit or do what Duncan does, practice self-control and maybe not combo off immediately as soon as you get it in your hand if you have that willpower. But I would just recommend looking up casual play of Commander and seeing what you think of those decks and how you would either better them a little bit, or maybe if you like to build them in that format, just so you can kind of get an idea of what casual play looks like, and you can see how many turns it takes and kind of how their turns develop and how the game swings. So
Good advice. I think that's great.
Yeah.
So what I get out of today's episode
oh boy,
is that I'm always right and I have great willpower. That's what I heard.
I mean, that's what
my
I heard too.
takeaways.
I feel like you're just the best of us.
I don't disagree. So, but thank you.
If you guys want to learn more about how to be like Duncan, I feel like you can email him.
Yep.
You can contact him.
his phone number is
Contact me at
If you're not contacting him, then you are okay existing in a lesser form.
That's right.
And you've got to ask yourself, is the rest of the people around me okay with that?
And Sloan, what do you always tell people?
hey, be better.
Be better.
Be like Duncan.
Yeah. That's what he really means by that.
I think so.
Yeah. But thank you all for joining us today. Appreciate you listening to our shenanigans. I want to thank Jack May at Info Pilgrims. You can check us out on commanderspod.com. You can email us at cast@commanderspod.com. We always want to hear from our fans or even people that may not like us very much.
Yeah, specifically those
Just
people.
tell us we're alive.
Yeah.
Also, you can check us out, maybe support us at Patreon at commanderspod.com.
Yep.
And remember, everyone, kill Andrew first.
If you can.